Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Monday. The weekend is over. We are already thinking about the next game. Tuesday evening in Zagreb, Chelsea kicking off their Champions League campaign. Of course, Thomas Tuchel, as I'm recording this actually, is doing his press conference along with Mateo Kovacic. So excited for the return of the Champions League, not only from a Chelsea perspective, but just I think there's some really exciting games. And I'm actually glad we have the early kickoff so I can kind of fully focus on the 8 o'clock kickoffs after. But let's hope, fingers crossed, that Chelsea can build on Saturday's win. If you haven't seen my rational perspective, my sort of analysis of the game, please go back and watch it. It is on the channel. But this is going to be Let's Talk Chelsea news video. We're speaking about two topics today. Reece James, his new contract, absolutely massive news for Chelsea Football Club. And also looking ahead to January. Yes, I know you're already sort of rolling your eyes over central midfield. So before we get into any of that good stuff, make sure guys to hit the like button because it helps new people find the channel. Hit that subscribe button if you are enjoying it so you don't miss any of the uploads. Hit that notification bell too on the channel. But let's get into it. Reece James, we knew this news was coming. We knew confirmation was coming of Reece's new contract at Chelsea. But it was still brilliant to see it official. It's been great to see the content. It's been great to see the quotes, some of the pictures today. This is huge. Arguably, and to some inarguably, this is the best bit of business Todd Boehly has done from a transfer perspective so far at Chelsea Football Club. And I have to say, compared to all the players we brought in, the players we've sold, I think you can make a very strong case that Reece James is the best signing by some distance, given his quality, given his importance, and given the future of him at this football club. He has signed a 6-year contract. There was some confusion actually when the announcement was made that it was going to be 5+1, but kind of subtly actually Chelsea changed it a little bit post the announcement, or at least the details of it. But on agreeing a new contract, Todd Boehly, chairman, said, "We are thrilled to give Reece a new long-term contract at Chelsea. He is an outstanding player and a true Chelsea man, and we are all looking forward to watching him continue to flourish at Stamford Bridge." And of course, Reece James, this is what he had to say on signing the contract. "I am over the moon with my new contract and I'm thankful for the fans, the new ownership and everyone involved in the club. I cannot wait to see what the future holds and I am sure we will have the chance of winning many trophies. I grew up supporting this club and I've been here since I was 6 years old. I put pen to paper on a new deal because this is the club I want to be at. I'd like to say a special thanks to the fans. I am here to stay and we have a bright future ahead of us." I think this deal is so huge on several levels. I wrote about it today for Football London. I think it's not only what it represents for Reece as a Chelsea player and his standing at the club, with becoming the highest paid defender in the club's history. That is a sentence that sounds massive, but to me is kind of just logical. And that is one of the things that this deal, along with others, the new contracts, it's starting to readdress the balance of Chelsea's wage structure, which last season I think was a bone of contention personally for me, when you were watching some of the performances of players on quite big contracts and not seeing any output that justified that expense for the club, compared to the likes of Reece and Mason and others who were not getting paid as much but were some of the most important and consistent players within the team. So I think readdressing the balance was something that Boehly had to do, and he's starting to do it. It's the speed at which Chelsea have got this deal done. It's not the fact that obviously there have been talks going on, but symbolically I think you've seen the Harvey Vale contract, you saw Amanda Broha, his contract on Friday, and now you've seen Reece James, and now we're moving on to Mason Mount. They're keeping to their word, the new owners, but I think that just says so much, because we've seen already that there is, of course, an interest in investing in the now with big players that can come in and improve Thomas Tuchel's squad. But quite clearly, there is also that foundation of success that they are hoping to build in the long term, and that the next 6 weeks aren't just a big thing for Chelsea. And it's, for me, rectifying a problem that could have been a bigger problem down the line, just getting it done. Handing Reece James a new contract, for me, and handing Mason Mount a new contract, they're just no-brainers. They're just the most obvious thing for this club to do. The talent is quite clearly there. The potential is there for even greater things, and the value that they can hold to the club. I look at, when I think of the phases of Chelsea, if that's something that exists and means anything, I think of Reece James, I think of Mason Mount. These are players who have been such big parts of the last couple of years, and I think if you were to pick out the 4 or 5 best players for Chelsea, I think these two, particularly Reece James, I think he's the highest scoring defender in the Premier League since the start of last season. And the shame of it is, I think he still hasn't had like a full season of kind of fitness of being incredible. I think he could have had that last year, but of course he did have injury problems. We really hope this season is going to be the one for him, and such big news, such lovely news as well, to get him signed and to get that long-term contract that he deserves and to be paid, because there are going to be big European clubs circling, and for him to be valued and trusted and given that contract, you hope you feel settled, and hopefully along with him the club are investing in the right way so we can continue to be successful and challenge, because that's the way you're going to keep a talent like Reece James as well. It's not just about handing him that contract, it's also about what we do on the pitch, because I think like a lot of people, they believe that Reece, very rightly, is not only one of the best young talents in Europe currently, but it's what he could become in the future. So massive news. I don't think any Chelsea fan will be grumbling at this. It's big, and as I say at the start of this, arguably the biggest piece of business Todd Boehly has done so far, and we could have Mason on the way soon with his new contract, which I think is fully deserved as well. Let's get to the second story regarding January transfers. Yes, I was quite shook actually this morning, because I was just so happy to put the summer transfer window behind and start thinking about the football, because there's going to be so much of it in the coming weeks, and I think that's obviously right. But I think there's only, in terms of Premier League match days, I think there's only 10 left before the November break for the World Cup, and then we have basically I think 1 or 2 games, and it's the January transfer window. And Nazar Kinsella in the Evening Standard reporting today that Chelsea have decided on their January transfer priority, with spending to continue. Chelsea's new owners are ready to keep spending in January as they target a new midfielder. It emerged over the weekend that the Blues had failed with a 50 million bid for Southampton's Romeo Lavia after missing out on Ajax's Edson Alvarez on a frantic deadline day. Chelsea made a 40 million move for Alvarez and are set to revisit their search for a midfielder in January, with the Mexico international thought to be their preferred option. Alvarez told Ajax last week that he wanted to move to Stamford Bridge, but the Dutch club were adamant he was not for sale so late in the window. I like that, because if you watched my sort of video on deadline day, I think it was, where I was kind of recapping the transfer window, and one of my criticisms was the sudden late surge for a new midfielder, which eventually ended up being Dennis Zakaria on loan, was kind of, why are we going in for Alvarez? Is this kind of a big target? Is the target now just going to be sort of thrown away because we didn't get him on deadline day? But it looks like Alvarez is going to be one we go back for, which I think is good. On top of that, the midfield situation has to be resolved. I keep on saying this, but you've got Jorginho. There's some stories about him again today in terms of his contract situation. N'Golo Kante, it's the same. Already this season, central midfield has kind of been a problem area for Thomas Tuchel, and there is maybe some theory that Jorginho, could Chelsea permanently sell him in January, at least get some feedback for him rather than him just walking out the club for free next summer, especially if we were to get Alvarez. I mean, you have to throw now Jules Koundé into the mix when we're talking about Chelsea going back for players, because we all thought Jules Koundé was going to become a Chelsea player, and obviously that didn't turn out to be the case. I think the one difference is obviously that hopefully there won't be a change in ownership by the time we get to January transfer window, and Tuchel does want the player, because I do think he would hopefully suit what we're trying to do and trying to evolve the midfield beyond what it currently is. I mean, Nemanja Matic, if you remember, we bought him back to the club in the January transfer window, so there could be a bit of symbolism there if we buy Alvarez in January. I think that it makes sense to, if we are going to spend it, it's also the director of football whether we can get one in place before January. I don't think that going for a new midfielder is a stupid way of going about things with Chelsea, because they've needed one for so long. A permanent option, we have to see how Zakaria goes. Zakaria could, things change so quickly in football. Zakaria, our dream scenario is that Zakaria is not a Sal Niguez. He turns out to be a very, very good option for Chelsea. He puts the injury woes behind him, he puts the doubts behind him, he adapts well to English football and what Thomas Tuchel wants, and at least you've got one potential midfield option that you could buy next summer for around 30 million from Juventus. So fingers crossed on that front, because we've got, obviously, you cannot forget we have actually brought one in. But in terms of that significant investment and that future planning beyond Kante and Jorginho, which is so required, it's nice to see that the club are going to try and be proactive in January if the move is there to be had. And if, Ajax, who I think in the end, what quite clearly derailed that move was just Chelsea coming in so late. I do wonder with Ajax, with the amount of money they've been making recently from English clubs, they will see that as a priority. And also, I would still throw Hakim Ziyech's name back in there, because if we get to January and we're still in the same place where Ziyech wants to leave, Todd likes his swap deals, he likes his exchanges and trades, and he wanted to do one of those. I don't know whether, once again, a bit like Alonso and Aubameyang, which in the end were separate deals actually, whether we'd see Ziyech go back to Ajax, we get Alvarez in return. We'll see how that plays out. Let me know your opinions on Alvarez. Just in terms of January, and just in terms of the current squad, do you think that a midfielder of Alvarez's type is the big thing in January if we are going to only target one area? Because I'd be quite shocked if we're targeting multiple areas in what is usually a difficult window. And Alvarez, there's already been that connection and interest made, and quite clearly the player is open to the move. So maybe we'll see something happen in the winter. But that is it for today's episode of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell. Hit that like button so new people can find the channel as well. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.